Hello, and welcome back to Rooted in the Seasons, where ancient wisdom meets modern life with a strong cup of tea and practical tools for real busy women. I'm Katya Patel, Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle educator, yoga teacher, teacher mentor. I help women recognize when they are out of rhythm and learn how to find their way back through small daily rituals, seasonal rhythm, and timeless wisdom that fits into real life. This podcast is part of a wider body of work I offer, including my live workshop, When Rest Isn't Enough, where we create rhythm, nervous system support, and daily practices in a deeper, more structured way. In today's episode, I want to talk about something I come back to again and again: yoga philosophy. And I know that might sound a little abstract at times or a little dry, but what I've come to appreciate over the years is that these teachings are incredibly practical. In fact, they are made for when life feels full, busy, and slightly out of sync. This is exactly why I keep returning to them again and again, because I can see what many women experience as stress or overwhelm often has something much simpler underneath: a loss of rhythm. And the yoga philosophy gives us a way to understand that and a way to work with it. So this episode is for you if you have ever had that feeling that something is slightly off, even when everything looks fine on the outside. Maybe your day feels full before it even begins. Maybe you end the day tired, but not quite settled. Or maybe what used to work just doesn't land in the same way anymore. If that sounds familiar, you are certainly not alone. In yoga philosophy, there is a way of understanding these patterns that quietly shape how we live. They're called the kleshas. You don't need to remember their name. What matters is what they describe. Patterns, these patterns don't just show up in meditation or big life questions. They show up in much simpler ways and in how your day unfolds, in the choices you make without really thinking, in the patterns you repeat even when they don't quite work. And often they show up in something very familiar: that feeling of being slightly out of a rhythm. You wake up a little tired or heavy. The day already feels full. And even when you try to rest or reset, it doesn't quite land. Have you noticed that? So where does this begin? In yoga philosophy, the first pattern is called Avidya. You can think of it as a misunderstanding, a quiet losing of sight of something that is already there. Because your body isn't random. It follows a rhythm, the same rhythm we see in nature. Energy arises and falls, digestion strengthens and gets challenged. The body prepares for rest long before we go to bed. This is something Ayurveda has observed for thousands of years. And modern science reflects this through the circadian rhythm. And yet, it's very easy to overlook this and begin to shape the day in a different way. Let me pause here for a moment. So, what we are looking at here is quite simple. Your body already follows a natural rhythm. And over time, we begin to move away from it without really noticing. For whatever reason, mostly work patterns or kid schedules, we create a rhythm that fits around that. Over time, something subtle happens. We begin to trust our own way more than nature's rhythm. I'll eat when I have time. I'll go to bed when I feel tired. I'll fit things in where they work for me. It feels like flexibility, right? It even feels like freedom. And in many ways, it is. But slowly, something shifts. We move further away from what actually supports us. And over time, the day becomes less about rhythm and more about preference. What feels good? What suits us in the moment? Maybe it's staying up late when the house is quiet. This is my favorite. Or pushing through the afternoon dip to get more done. Or eating when it's convenient. These things feel familiar. And because they feel familiar, they feel right. And so we repeat them. And then they all of a sudden become something we rely on. Have you noticed that something you do just to get through the day slowly starts to feel essential? And at the same time, something else happens. We begin to move away from what would support us, which would be going to bed a little earlier, slowing down when the energy dips, eating at regular times. These things all of a sudden feel unfamiliar, sometimes even uncomfortable. So the day begins to shape itself around what we prefer and what we avoid. In yoga, these are called Raga and Dvesha. The tendencies to repeat what feels good and move away from what doesn't. And here's something important shifts. We are no longer responding to rhythms, but to a habit. And this is really the turning point. The day is no longer shaped by what supports you, but by what feels familiar and what you have learned to repeat. And even when this doesn't leave us feeling better, this is why, even when things feel fine on the surface, there still can be a quiet sense of something is off, not quite settled, not quite satisfied. This often sneaks in quietly rather than all at once. So when things look fine, there's a quiet sense of something isn't quite landing. I see this very often in my consultations. Even small supportive changes can feel surprisingly difficult, like eating or going to bed at certain times. They become challenging because they ask us to step away from something familiar. You might at times hear yourself thinking, this works for me, this is what I need. And that makes sense because what you're doing has started to feel essential. Underneath all of this, there's often a subtle fear. A fear that something might get lost. Might be time, space, or control. Things like, if I go to bed earlier, I lose my only quiet time. Or if I slow down, I fall behind. So we stay with what we know. So your body isn't working against you here. It is responding to what it has learned. And so the loop continues. A day shaped less by rhythm and more by preference, avoidance, and habit, only because it's very easy to lose sight of what was supporting us all along. And this is the point where many women get stuck. Because even when you start to notice these patterns, and even when you try to rest more or slow down, the shift doesn't quite happen. And this is where something important becomes clear. Rest on its own isn't always enough. What your body is asking for is rhythm, for something it can recognize, something it can rely on, something that guides your day. Well, you might think this all makes sense, but I struggle to actually do this consistently. Again, you are not alone with that. This is exactly why I created my life workshop, When Rest Isn't Enough. It's a space where we practice this together, where you don't have to figure it out on your own. So let's go back to Patanjali and what the Yoga Sutra suggests to get back from this. And they point to a simple way back, which is steady practice, awareness, and returning to what supports you again and again. So if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this: small, Steady rhythms matter more than we often expect. You don't need to change everything. One small anchor is enough. A regular meal once a day. Going to bed slightly earlier. Pausing when the energy dips. And importantly, staying with it, because rhythm builds slowly through repetition. Thank you so much for listening to Rooted in the Season. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe or follow Rooted in the Seasons on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So every new episode lands automatically for you. If you like more support between episodes, you can download my free guide, my 5 quick Ayurvedic fixes from scattered to steady, and join my Sunday Read newsletter. You'll find all the relevant links in the show notes. And if something in today's episode resonated, I genuinely love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Substack, or even easier, drop me an email. I'll read and answer all of them. Until next time, stay rooted in the seasons. Bye-bye.